Hey class, this is part 3. Again, you don't want to start with this one. This is the third part. Watch the other two first. We're going to start with an artist named Rembrandt. Actually, Rembrandt is his first name. He has two very long middle and last names. Actually, the last name's not too long. It's just kind of weird sounding. So anyway, he's just known as Rembrandt. He lived a fairly long life. He died at 63, which is probably average in the 1600s. His painting style is probably the most realistic, and that's really why Rembrandt is known as this great colossal painter. He wasn't a really renowned guy around the world. He did paint a lot of paintings, like over 400 paintings. Like, it was not uncommon for aristocrats to own a Rembrandt. You know, it wasn't like anyone owned a Michelangelo or owned a Da Vinci, but Rembrandts were things you could own. And they continue to be very popular. Most of them today are owned by museums and the lot. But Rembrandt's paintings are super realistic. A lot of them have a lot of emotion to them. A lot of them are portraits. This first one is not like either of those things. The first one is called The Night Watch. It's from 1642. And it is about a military band the night before a parade. Okay? And I'll show you what it's like here. And, I'm sorry, Rembrandt is from... he is from the Netherlands. So here it is, the Night Watch, and one thing that Rembrandt did is he painted in oil, and the oil actually gives a lot of subtle light to it. So a lot of things in real life, you don't have bright things and dull things. You have things that capture light and don't capture light. And so the light hits everything, it just the way it hits it changes the way you see it. So in this painting here, you see basically a military parade. So this would have been a military parade or the night before one, setting up for it. And then you have this angelic figure behind the guys here, basically meaning God is on our side. Basically the idea that there is a higher power working for us in this instance. There's also a weird cat over here too. But Rembrandt is interesting in the way that he portrays people, and probably best in this one here. It's called Girl in the Picture Frame. Kind of a boring name, but it's from 1641. And Girl in the Picture Frame is very weird. It's very hyper-realistic. And it looks like this, where you see a girl emerging from the picture frame. Now, I can't zoom in, but these are some super realistic hands. And the fact that his painting style was such that he was minimalist in the amount of brush strokes he would create. So you have a lot of texture. And the world has a lot of texture, and so he was able to create realistic paintings with not a lot of what looked like effort, but when you back up and look at it, it is super realistic. And, I wanted to read a quote here. When it comes to being able to draw with a paintbrush, no one can touch Rembrandt. He was able to turn abstract brushstrokes into forms with texture, weight, and liveliness. Rembrandt could turn 2 swipes of painting brush loaded with white paint into a coarse cloth of a girl's sleeve. He captured ruddy and calloused hands with just 2 or 3 colors and no more than a dozen strokes of the brush. He was probably the most talented, realistic artist in that he painted and was able to look like he was drawing with paint. And that's incredibly difficult. And so this painting here, where you see her hands kind of coming over the frame, almost something you would see at the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland, in terms of its kind of creepiness. The last guy we're going to look at here is a Flemish painter named Johannes or Jan van Eyck. And he is born in 1390 and he dies in 1441. And his painting is called the Arnolfini portrait. And this is actually a real guy. The real guy's name is Giovanni Arnolfini. And it's a portrait of their marriage. It's painted in 1434. And what you see here is a man and woman getting married, and you have a lot going on in this painting. You can't really see it, and unless you look at the details. So there's a lot of symbolism here. For instance, like the fruit over here is supposed to symbolize like the fruit of sin, like basically a reminder of the Garden of Good and Evil of Adam and Eve. You have like the nuptial flame. You have the fact that she's obviously pregnant, getting married to Giovanni. You have like the dog, and the dog symbolizes love. And there's a lot going on here, but it's not the coolest part. All right, the coolest part is what is in the background. And in the background of this, you see a mirror. And if we take a closer look at the mirror, it's actually reflecting the back of the people who he's painting. So here you see Mr. Arnolfini, the future Mrs. Arnolfini, the person giving the nuptials here, and then, or the officiant, I'm sorry, and then the artist himself back here. And the fact that it's like, you know, convex here, so, you know, like a round mirror would be. And then you have these little portraits inside the mirror. And so a lot of stuff going on here that you really have to like look. And then another thing is he signed it. You know, I said that Michelangelo was one of the first person to sign something from the Renaissance. Van Eyck actually eclipsed him by about 100 years here in doing so. So this painting itself, super interesting. The people look really weird, and a lot of perspective here. You can see that moving towards the back wall, and the detail and the realistic portrayal of things like the chandelier and the dog and the ruffles in the thing, and then their faces look kind of plain. So he's working on a few different levels here. But that's it. That's our lesson on Renaissance art. I hope you took really good notes and you got some IDs done, or you got some ideas about what to put on some of your IDs. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.